Hey guys, here's the gear for today. A couple of new things, a couple of old things. Old is this 40s style super speed vintage Gillette. Old is this Personna that I've been using now for about 6 shaves or so. New is the Oud Sigma soap from Stirling. It was one of the Black Friday 2022 special ones released then. And then very excited to bring to my face and to you guys this brush. It's been months in the waiting. It is a Zenith Boar brush, and it's the big guy. The big one that they have, I think B35, something like that, is the United States Zenith code that the Gentle Shave put on the one like this. Not the kind of sub-exclusive labeling here, but that this same shape in the kind of ivory color that Zenith has is the B35. And then 508A XL is the Zenith code for non-US, the actual one that Zenith uses everywhere else, the non-Gentle Shave code. And if you look on the Gentle Shave, there is a cross-reference table in case you ever get confused between the two types of coating. There is a slight problem with that chart, and I was just talking about that earlier today with a fellow shaver. Our sub, our wet shaving, sub is another word for forum if you don't know about Reddit. Our wet shaving put together this, and this is our little logo there, the snoo, I think it's called, for Reddit, and he's got a beard of lather. And then it just says 2022 our wet shaving, and then on the bottom sub exclusive, and then on the very bottom Zenith made in Italy. And so that we picked a custom, we picked a color, this kind of green, I think it's called pearl green or something like that. I really like it. Now that I have it in my hand, it's very fitting that this is somewhat similar to the Stirling color, because Rod, and if you're watching my channel now for a while, you've heard, Rod of Stirling did a lot to help to make this possible. It was they didn't even know when they started with this that it was going to be so much effort to with international shipping of an animal product. Oh yeah, all the brushes had to be shipped from Italy and those Zenith and stuff over to Rod, because he's the only one that was authorized, and he had to renew his license to be an importer of these kind of things. They couldn't just ship them to the individual people, that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm not going to go into all the complexities. I've kind of done that before on my channel. Maybe I'll do a little mini video about it at some point. But I've had this soaking for a number of hours today. I didn't mean to have it soaking for that long. I'm going to get him back in the water just to kind of start fresh with a wet brush in just a minute. And a few days of growth, maybe 5, maybe 4, something like that today. So we have not used the Oud Sigma yet. It's got that oud frankincense family of kind of savoriness going on. Kind of those kind of Eastern spices, things like that. And so I'm looking forward to trying it. The 40 style super speed, probably my favorite super speed. And I mentioned it the other day when I was using that black handle super speed, the flare tip. Well, you can see this does not flare out. Easy to differentiate it. Plus this has a more standard knurling pattern here, just kind of a micro knurl. And the other ones have different kind of tiling patterns. This, you can date them a little bit by whether it's notched or not. Back in 1948, 49, something like that, there were some pre-date code ones that were notched or unnotched. So that's one way to date it. This one, this one's NDC, which stands for no date code. It doesn't say NDC. I just know that there's no date code on here, and so I can tell you that it's one of the NDC models, which means it's before a certain year. think maybe it's before 1950 or 49 or something like that. And so if you know it's before that time, you can date it a little bit more in terms of corralling it into certain places by whether it's got a notched, and this one is notched. If it's not notched, then let me put my finger behind it. See, there's that notch right there at the very end. Then if it's not, then there would be a T shape right here instead of this little notch. And I actually like the T shape because that T shape, the T would go into this very last vertical slot right here. And man, it holds the blade perfectly in place. So we're going to put this comfort coated Personna. And I believe I was talking to somebody just today online, and I believe that this is the same as the Personna Lab Blue, I believe. He mentioned that. And I think he's right, but it's been a while since I did my research on that, but I think he's right. Okay, so this is going to be the first time this brush is used. I lathered it up once and made a lather with my little puck of Marvy soap. And I just did a palm lather with it just to kind of clean it after shipment, let it dry. And then today it's been soaking for a few hours. So this is going to be a pretty early use. I may start titling these videos Boar break-in, just so we can have day 1, day 2, day 3, that kind of thing. That would be interesting, maybe, instead of my just a shave prefix. The blade is loaded. Let me get my face all wet. Now, in the past, you've definitely seen me use boar brushes, and with my Boarathon, there's about 12 or 13 brushes that I am using in a pretty constant rotation. Use all of them one time, then all of them 2 times, so that I can compare the brands and how they're changing in relation to each other as they each tick another use. Because, in case you're new to boar brushes, they really vary when you're breaking them in. And in fact, with this being the first real facial use of this brush, I can expect maybe to have to go back to this tub before every pass. I won't be surprised if I have to do that. Because I think what's going on, pretty confident what's going on with most boar brushes, and this is typical, is that they just don't have the splay quite yet, the area between the bristles. Also, important to soak a brush for a while before you shave, at least like 3 or 4 minutes. I prefer more like 10 or 15 minutes. But this one, because I'm breaking it in, and also because I didn't really expect to have it soaking for several hours, but that's just the way it kind of worked out. That wasn't intentional, but that's what we're looking at today. And so I'm not going to be surprised if it's very stiff on its first use. I'm not going to be surprised at that at all. I'm not going to be surprised if I have to go back to the tub of soap before each pass. It doesn't hold a lot of water at first, like I said, because there's not a whole bunch of water between the bristles. Boar brushes do absorb water more than any other natural hair shaving brush. Badgers absorb a little, horses absorb a little, but boars absorb a lot. And that's why before you use them, if you put them on your face, they feel like a broom. But you soak them for a while, and the water gets in there, makes it much more pliable. So there we go. All right, so let's do, 20 seconds, 45, rolled around right there. So that means we go to 05. And the reason I'm doing 20 is because I'm pretty confident I'm going to come back to you know what? Let's do 30. So that would mean 15. Just kind of medium pressure. Okay, 10 is rolling around right there, so 5 more seconds. Okay, so that is 30 seconds. And many people will take a brush like this, and one of their goals is to just churn through soap. And that's a fine goal if you want. But to me, that's kind of a waste. You bought it. Why not enjoy it? Instead of wasting it, it's like throwing it out, Now, we're going to feel the stiffness of this brush right now as we kind of start to work it. This is a 31 millimeter brush. In fact, the page on the Gentle Shave about this, I think it B35 is what it is. About this one, it says this is more than you need. This is not your, a friendly brush. This is going to help you to, if you've got, he even made mention, if you want to churn through a bunch of soap. And the idea is because it's so stiff, it's going to be very easy to, when you're loading your soap, to just pull up a whole bunch of soap on your brush. Now, if you know anything about me, if I load a whole bunch of soap on my brush, that means it's going to just take me a while to add enough water to make it right, because I don't like to have that concentrate on my face. I don't want it dry lather, relatively dry. Oh yeah, that same kind of seasoning and the notes there are coming up to me. And let's add a little bit of water to it now. I had to fill up my jigger, and off screen there I loaded up about 11 milliliters. I'm sure I'll need more, but that's what we put in for now just to kind of get started. So young boars, number one, they don't have split tips yet. Now after you use it once, you'll start to see some tips split on most of the brushes. Some Oud, Zenith, you'll definitely have tips being split. Certain Omegas. Some of them are kind of resistant to splitting, like the Stirling Boar. Most of the Omegas that have more kind of unbleached and kind of stronger bristles. I can feel the backbone here, but it is splaying a little bit. Now, I think the benefit of the larger diameter brush here is that even while it has a lot of backbone, because it's so large, I think it's going to be on your face. All it has to do is splay a little bit, and it's a large contact patch. And so I think in terms of being young, the larger diameter is going to be more palatable than the smaller diameter, which is going to feel more pokey and more like a stick. Okay, now this is a very wet looking lather here. Young boar brushes have a tendency to kill lather, and with it looking so wet right now, I'm just going to kind of clean it out just a little and go back to the tub and get some more soap. Maybe about 5 more seconds there. So that's 35-second total load time, but honestly, I may not even track load time on this one because we are at such a young stage. This is a thick, chunky handle, and they did give some contouring here. Let me put my finger behind it so you can see. There's a little saddle back here, and then of course you've got the main area up here to grab. So you could almost call it a chubby style handle, which I often don't like, but I think this is big enough where I'm going to be able to hold it comfortably. It'll be really great when the splay increases, and it won't be as backbony as I'm working it in the stiff as I'm working it here in the bowl. It won't be as much effort to hold on to it. Okay, there we go. It's still kind of a very wet lather. And that's okay. We're just going to go ahead and go with it. If I have to go back to the puck, I'll do that. Wet my face one more time. So this is use number 1 with this particular boar brush. And let's kind of charge it up as best we can. And we don't have a lot of lather left in the bowl. And I'm going to start gently so that we don't have a big glop. Well, see, I say that. See, it's really quite wet. So you know what I'm going to do? Go back for a few seconds. And so that concentrate now is going to thicken up what's on my face, what's the wetness that's in the brush and all that. And if you don't try to make it splay too much, then it doesn't feel all scratchy. It doesn't feel like a broom at all. It's going to be scrubby, and some of the tips do kind of feel soft, but it's not scratchy. A long soak may have helped that. So there are, while I'm working this into my face, there are some people who do different accelerator methods. And I've talked about that in the past when I've done a boar brush usage. I can't decide whether I'm going to use the hairdryer on the tips of this brush or if I'm just going to do kind of my long soak. With my other Zenith brush, which is going to have the same fibers as this one, with my other Zenith, it took about 25 uses to get to a point where I was enjoying using the brush because of it holding enough lather, because it finally relaxed in terms of the backbone. Let me go back to the tub here. Get a little bit more of the lather, and that's what young boar brushes do. So I haven't decided if I'm just going to do a long soak or if I am going to do the hairdryer across the tips. Because when I did the 25 uses on the other Zenith, you know, it did take a while. And so maybe the hairdryer might be the way to go. As long as you don't over fry the tips, as long as you don't try to get the hairdryer into the knot. You just kind of go across the tips with like a medium heat setting. I'm thinking it might be safe, but you know, we don't really have concrete data on that I know of. All right, so as you saw, even though I put some paste on the tips there by going back to the soap a few times, there was still enough water in the brush. You could see it kind of come out the root of the knot here, and that's going to be pretty standard for a young boar. And we have a good little thin layer of lather on my face, and that's all it takes. If you know that if you watch my channel very much. So this has a good grip on the blade, and so it's very little chatter, and I like that. Oh yeah, see, it's moving through the hair easily. This is definitely the super speed I would grab if I was in some kind of antique store and they had a selection of flare tip super speeds, or this one, or I like it better than the Tech, I think. That's a common vintage razor that you might see sometimes. It's easily moving through this above average amount of stubble. Continuing with very light pressure. Like there wasn't even any extra growth. It just moved so nicely through the hair. A little bit of half rinse now. All right, so here we go. What do we want to do now? Do we want to do the same thing I just did where I tried to mix up a batch of lather in the bowl? Nah, you know what? Why don't we just kind of load for a bit? Because as you saw, the wetness in the brush just kind of leaked out. Let's lay this kind of thick paste on my face. Well, there's enough water in the brush already to not make it a paste. But let's see if we can maybe get it on my face first. And then we'll start maybe sprinkling the brush with a little bit of water. Across the tips there, like a normal face latherer might do. It is requiring some effort to kind of keep it in splay here. That's okay. But really, this is a tribute to the Zenith bristles, because all it had was a trial lather and a long soak, and this is still, you know, fairly comfortable. Now this little thin lather I've got on my face could probably use a little bit more water, but honestly, I'm pretty sure it would work just fine. just going to add that water right there, work it a little bit, and then shave, I think. See, it's just not really generating much of a lather. And that's typical for a young boar brush. Now, you can do things like take it into the shower with you, scrub it on your bar soap, and, use it to, give yourself a good, clean experience in the bath. And that will, of course, almost simulate a shave. And so then you could say that's a use. And so you could do something like that for a few weeks. And then before you even take it to your face, it's kind of already had enough workout to maybe do really well on your face, and you don't have to experience this kind of thing. Cross grain, oh yeah, see, such an effective cut that I'm feeling the cutting, but it's just barely necessary. So much was taken off in that first pass. Yet another razor where this Personna works really well. Now, I almost feel like I got a little razor burn from an earlier move somewhere in this area, but it's gone now. And so I guess it was pretty minor, but that's just proof that you could mess yourself up if you had a little bit of a lapse in technique. But by keeping a very light touch, and I'm watching my angles in my neck area especially. A lot of guys have problems with the neck area. It's because I think angles, the skin is more loose in that area, and the grain of your hair just can more easily twist and turn. I think that's the core of it. And so many guys then will they think they're doing light pressure, but they really need to go even lighter. So now for the third pass. This is what the brush looks like. Let's kind of do the same thing. Go and get a little bit of relative paste from the soap. Work it in a little bit. And then take some droplets, add it to the brush. Now, sometimes if you have a brush where you feel like it's pivoting around in a certain spot and poking you, sometimes that's because you just don't have enough lather in your brush. Because with the lather in there, it's much more easy for the knot itself to splay open and stay open. And sometimes the fact that it kind of acts like a drill and it feels that way is a clue to me, like, hey, your lather has now exited the brush. Somehow the lather has died, something like that. And so just add more lather, and then all of a sudden, keeping it in a splay in a comfortable way becomes much easier when you kind of go back and either rebuild more lather or go back to your bowl and get some more, that kind of thing. With all the scrubbing that we're doing with this brush, if you are breaking in a brush kind of in the same manner, that might have a tendency to be maybe a little scrubby, feel free to not try a razor that is a little on the aggressive side. If you have something more mild and more easy going on your skin, that may be the time to whip it out, because your skin might have enough to deal with just the more brush action that you're having to do, the stiffness of the bristles, that sort of thing. So, I think a largely unneeded pass here, but just to kind of clean up any stray pieces, any stray bits. I could have gone back and added some more, sprinkled some more water on the brush, and I would have had a little bit more of a slick feel here. This feels a little on the dry side, but it'll work. The scent here it's very nice. It's not being obnoxious. but it is what it is. It's that kind of, savory. It's almost like frankincense and myrrh kind of vibe, but pull it back a little bit, maybe add some resins and the oud, and so you're keeping it back from maybe that seasonal Christmassy kind of feel into more of a warm, classy kind of mature type scent. I may not want to wear this all day. I think I did buy the EDT from Stirling at the time because it was a limited run, and but on the other hand, it might be really nice to wear all day. Don't think I'd want to smell it in a strong sense all day, but they do fade over time, and so that might be just perfect for this one, so that it's not too much for you. So that amount of brush use and the stiffness with which I experienced that. The tip still felt pretty comfy, but by the end of the shave, I think with the razor and its exfoliating action, I think it did build up a tiny bit of tenderness. But I think it's the kind that a good balm is going to dispense with in just a couple of minutes. Even if I didn't use a balm, I bet it would be just not even an issue at all in 10 minutes or 8 minutes or something like that. So but it's not a perfect feeling after the shave there, but that's going to go away with more uses. So here is a big old chunky brush. Do I have something else to kind of show you an example? Yeah, this is a common handle available at different places like Maggard Razors and Shave Forge, AliExpress, that kind of thing. So here it is. It's not as tall as the one here, but it's quite a bit wider as I hold them up together like that. And so that is the wet shaving sub-exclusive brush. And if you don't know what a sub-exclusive brush or item is, somebody in an organization, Badger and Blade as a forum, the Shaving Cadre, the plenty of other guys have done the Shave Nook. A bunch of organizations out there, shaving communities, have done done exclusives to where everybody will band together, and then they'll pool their money and they'll request a certain design or a certain brush be made by a maker, and the maker will say, sure, I can do that. If you order 100 of them, then it's worth my time to engrave or label them in some specific way, or it's worth my time to create some special color of the handle. And so you have to work with the maker, you get people to sign up first, that kind of thing. And then when everything's hammered out, this particular one required a lot of work regarding the international shipping and all that stuff, like I mentioned before. And then everybody pays. Sometimes you have to pay beforehand. Then the artist can do the work, whether it's a soap, a brush, that sort of thing. The artisan does the work, and then somebody gets to receives them all, or they mail them all out, and now you've got your cool. Sometimes they're lot numbers, like 2 of 100. They have little identifying numbers to show that it was a limited run. This one shows the year on it, so that's pretty cool. All right, yeah. As usual, Stirling was a great performer there. Let us rinse off the brush. I'm going to do a little bit of a kind of a gentle towel stropping, like painting up. Some people with a boar brush that's young, they'll kind of scrub at the towel. I'm going to be fairly gentle at the towel level of things so that these tips will have less risk of breaking. It may be unwarranted at this point, at this age of the brush, but I tend to play it safe. All right, so here it is all clean and rinsed out, and you can see that there's a little bit of bend in the bristles because I can push them over and the tips kind of stay in the direction that I'll leave them. But at the very bottom section of the fibers, it's still got tons of backbone. There, you can squeeze it And so the density of boar brushes is not like Badger's. And so you could actually reduce it to a smaller diameter than it is when it leaves the handle. There's a little bit of a glue bump right around here that you can squeeze. There's more resistance here than there is here. And so that tends to make them a little bit more stiff and backbony. What I like to do is spread the bristles around kind of like that. This is kind of similar to the Omega Jade brush in terms of appearance, in terms of the size of it. It's available at Connaught Shaving. It was a special run. I did buy one of those. It's on my channel as well. Matter of fact, similar color in the green. But the look here reminded me of that. How we have a little bit of splay here. For a long time, I did have smaller boar brushes, and I didn't really think I needed a big one. And then one day there was a big 30 millimeter, probably a whip dog, I think, and I bought it because it was so cheap. I thought, let's try the 30. Well, there's something very different about a large diameter boar brush that I really enjoy, and they're not very expensive. And so I urge you to try one if you haven't, whether it's whip dog, the Umo boar knot I've heard is very nice. The Zenith I would highly recommend as well. I'm confident this is going to be a brush that I really enjoy using. Even if we ignore the fact that it was one that a bunch of my own community got together and joined and put out. Just performance alone, I think I'm really going to enjoy this brush, because what happens is that this contact patch that focuses on your face, as the backbone relaxes, it gets a little bit bigger, but you move that across your face, and the softness of those split tips, because these tips where now they're one, all of a sudden, gradually they'll become 3 or 5, and so then that means softness right at the tips, and so that big old the softness, the feel, and the patch there that's going to contact your face gradually gets softer and softer, but the backbone that's still behind it keeps that softness focused at your face, instead of maybe a Badger that tends to loft and fold over a little bit, where the tips can move away from your face. The backbone here keeps them at your face, and so you're experiencing that softness in a very different way than the smaller boar will give you. And so I was hooked once I tried that other one, and so I'm definitely on the lookout, and I've purchased a few other large diameter boar brushes. And the great thing is they're inexpensive knots, especially when you compare them with Badger. They're very inexpensive, and so it's a good boar knot is easily had and is pretty much in everybody's budget. Definitely enjoyed the Oud Sigma scent during the shave. I could see having this as a balm as well, because that scent doesn't last a super long time, a couple hours if you're lucky. And so I could see that being a very enjoyable scent to take with you away from after the shave is all done. Now I am going to, what do I have? I've got this Scarn. So the notes, the Oud notes, are definitely compatible with the Scarn profile, which is kind of I think it's there's some cologne that this is patterned after. Sauvage, I can't remember. And so let's rein in that kind of Eastern spice with a cologne type scent. See if they're compatible together. Nice close shave, as I kind of expected. My face wasn't as wet, so you can kind of see the whiteness of the balm. That will go away in just a few minutes. Well, that's a good shave. Thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, that went very well. Face feels great, nice close shave. I'm a happy camper. All the best to you. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. We'll hit this brush again soon for sure. Take care now. Good night.